The Last of Us is one of the greatest games of all time. It's at least one of the greatest games of, I don't know, the 2000s, like in general, the 21st century. The Last of Us has now received a television adaptation. The first episode premiered, I don't know, I think a week ago? Yeah, I believe so. And it's currently today, Sunday, January 22nd, 6:29 p.m. But the first episode premiered, I believe, a week ago. As a huge fan of the video game, I had to watch this. And let me just tell you right off the bat, I'm intrigued, I like it, I'm excited to watch the rest of the show, okay? Got that out of the way. The first episode, I think, does a few things differently than the game that I think are really cool, really interesting, and it fits the television format, a more cinematic format, of course. And it definitely, dialogue-wise, it was very faithful to the game. A bit too many times, I think, to the point where I think what they're doing is the first episode is going to be super, like faithful to the video game, and then after that, they're going to go, like, ballistic in completely different directions, which I hope they do, because I just, and I'm excited that Neil Druckmann is co-writing and co-producing this TV series. Either way, I think it's an awesome achievement, really, this first episode. I'm not sure if achievement's the right word. It's a great episode. It respects the source material while also adding new stuff in there that really just add much more depth and overall meaning to The Last of Us and its characters. Now, you might be asking, why are you doing a video like this? Well, I don't know. Look, you clicked on the video.
Okay, I gotcha.
When I watched the first episode, I felt in me that I preferred the video game. And it's so bizarre to me. And it happened when I watched Sarah's death scene in the TV series. And it was something so weird, because you would think I would enjoy TV, or films more because it's got real people, it's a little bit more relatable, it's more realistic, right? But at the end of the day, even though video games and TV are two different mediums, like, I'm a big believer that video games are a much more engaging entertainment medium than people think they are, at the very least. Sometimes I even think it's the ultimate entertainment medium. I discussed this in my podcast, Chips and Talk, talking about God of War Ragnarok. And The Last of Us video game is a very cinematic game. Like, it's probably the most cinematic video game, other than maybe Spec Ops: The Line, perhaps, that has ever existed. And that's part of the reason why it's so good, and it's part of the reason why a lot of people were like, oh my god, this is the greatest video game adaptation, or video game TV film adaptation ever. This is great. Like, it's like, dude, like, The Last of Us video game, like, is already pretty much as close to a movie, like, as a game could ever get. So it's not a huge achievement that it was properly adapted to TV. Right off the bat, the video game lends itself so easily to those mediums. Okay, so let's not praise it that much. I really don't see, why we should praise it. But there's a little bit of an argument there, just because video games, The Last of Us is still a video game. And I think that its storytelling, the way that it tells its story, goes really well with a video game. Whereas The Last of Us, from the very first episode on the TV series, that is, it's telling its story differently, and it makes some shortcuts here and there, because in the game, you play certain things, and you can't really do that in a TV series, so the story has to be told differently. And so, even though The Last of Us is a video game and it's very cinematic, the way that it goes about its storytelling is specifically done in a video game way. So I'm not saying that The Last of Us is a film or anything like the video game or whatever, but it's as close to a film as you could ever get in a video game medium. And yeah, it's still no, it's not impressive. To me, it's not impressive. Okay, to me, it's not. The fact that it came out really good is awesome, and it has nothing to do with the fact that The Last of Us is a video game or whatnot. It's just a really good episode and a really good TV series, pilot. So I don't know why I had to get into that tangent, but I had to. Okay, but watching that first episode, I think I preferred the game. And I used to be that guy who, again, loved film and TV and preferred that over video games in general, just because it's real people, it's more cinematic, it's more legitimate, whatever. But as I'm growing older, I start to realize really the power of video games and just how engaging they can be and how effective they can be with their storytelling and unique and, just overall engaging. Video games are all about engaging you no matter what, and that's brilliant. That's super hard to do. And for film and TV, it's sometimes a little easier to do that. And The Last of Us Episode 1 did do that. But it's so weird because I found one of the most pivotal scenes of The Last of Us is Sarah's death scene. And I found it to be more effective in the game. And so I thought for this video, we would compare the two, and I'll tell you a little bit why I prefer the video game. All right, so let's start off with The Last of Us TV series. So we do get Joel's character saying, we are not sick, over and over again. I think that's pretty realistic compared to the video game one. But overall, you could go either way with whatever approach. But I thought that was an interesting addition in the TV series. Now, you also have the army official or whatnot say, I'm sorry, right before he was about to kill Joel. I think, it's an interesting nuance, but I think that the video game one is probably a little bit more effective and kind of, at least in this particular scene, there are ways that the TV series does go the mile when it comes to the depression of this world and how everyone's so jaded and it just sucks for everyone. For the video game, the army official doesn't say I'm sorry, but I thought it was interesting that in the TV series he did say that. So again, interesting nuance, but I think that if you want to really continue portraying that this world sucks, you would go with the video game one. Now, it's interesting too, Joel actually is injured in this version of Sarah's death. This is something that my girlfriend pointed out when she was playing the Sarah's death in the video game. She was like, how come Joel didn't get hurt? Like, come on now, I always presented the argument, well, he was holding Sarah, like, come on, like, it could go either way, she was like his shield for a bit, so it could have gone either way. But I thought it was interesting that they had him actually get hurt in the TV series, but it didn't amount to anything. It's not like he died, so it was kind of unnecessary, but maybe it was something that Neil Druckmann thought about. Like, many people told me, like, why didn't he get shot? That's kind of unrealistic. And so I guess this is where, it's a TV series, it's real people, so it's trying to be more serious, whereas video games can get away with certain things like that, right? Okay, it happened to me when I first watched it, when I first watched the first episode, I was like, yeah, okay, the video game did it better. And then I watched it again after I ended the episode, and I was like, okay, it's pretty good, or it's not pretty good, it's better, I was like, the first time I watched it. And then I watched it right now again, and I was like, okay, all right, it's a little bit more powerful than I thought. But it's that thing where, I don't know, is it because I really do like it better, or is it that, just the pop song on the radio thing where, like, you hate the song, and then you hear it so often, like that you start enjoying it. So it's, I don't know if it's one of those, I'm not sure. But, there's a thing too where if you watch something a second time, you do notice certain things, you pick up certain emotions that you normally wouldn't have at first because you have certain expectations from the first time. But I also do think that when you experience things for the first time and they hit you, that's really good. And usually when I enjoy something for the first time, I continue enjoying it. And sometimes that enjoyment is furthered as I watch it again and again afterwards. Whereas if I don't enjoy something the first time, it's really bothersome. And sometimes after the subsequent watches or experiences after that, I hate it even more, or I still feel the same. Or sometimes, of course, you do end up liking it a little bit better. But at the very least, when you do enjoy something for the first time, you're pretty much 99.9% of the time going to continue enjoying it after that, and sometimes even add, enjoyment. So, fairly interesting. But first things I will note, the music, I think, is a huge part to The Last of Us video game. It's like, it's important, okay? And in this one, thanks to God that Gustavo Santaolalla is the composer again for the TV series. And it was pretty cool seeing throughout the episode certain songs that appeared in the game in the TV series. But here we get the same song, but we get it a little bit more pitched down. It's on the lower tone as compared to the game. The game has a higher pitch when it comes to the song.
You're okay. Move your hand, baby. Move your hand. Oh, I know, baby. I know.
Listen to me. I know this hurts, baby. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. All right, I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please.
And that's interesting. I think you could go either way. I think this one probably tried to have much more of a somber take to it. The composition of the scene is darker. Like, it's hard to even see what the hell's going on. Sarah is just it's a lot more real, like how she's just hyperventilating. It's really disturbing in many ways. It's sad, right? It's heartbreaking. And it's much more realistic, right? And so along with the music being pitched down to evoke just a more somber, dark feel to the scene and the darkness of the scene itself, whereas compared to the game, the song it's pitched higher, and the composition of the scene has a blue tinge to it. So it's fairly interesting. It's a little bit more of a nighttime feel. But it's also a video game, so it's got to be lit, I guess, a little bit better. But they could have gone with a darker feel to it, too. I'm not sure. But it's different, when you're lighting a game than when you're lighting a scene. But they went with it with a darker tinge. And obviously, you got to differentiate it. You don't want it to be the same. And just Sarah in this one she's just hyperventilating a lot more. And Joel, the amount of dialogue that he has, he's just constantly going, I know, which is very realistic. I mean, that's what a dad would do for sure, right? But in the game, he doesn't speak as much. It's less dialogue, and it's more animation. It's more seeing the characters. And also, Joel in this one screams out to Tommy, help me. I thought that was an interesting choice. I mean, it's heartbreaking, but I don't think I prefer the game where he didn't do that, because Joel wouldn't really do that. Joel is a very I got it type of guy. And I think that when he sees his daughter just kind of laying there, he's going to try to do as much as he can, or he's going to focus on her as much as he can. He doesn't really care what the hell's going on after that with anyone else, even though it's his brother. But his daughter's just a little bit closer, on the bloodline to him. But, maybe this was... maybe Joel has more development, in this TV series, and so they're trying to put a little bit more nuance to him. I'm not sure. But I think I enjoyed his decision to just keep his attention on his daughter compared to the TV series. But now let's go see what's going on with the video game version, and we'll come back with some thoughts.
Move your hands, baby. I know, baby, I know. God. Listen to me. I know this hurts, baby. You're gonna be okay, baby. Stay with me. I'm gonna pick you up. I know, baby. I know it hurts. Come on, baby. Please. I know, baby. I know. Sarah. Baby. Don't do this to me, baby.
Ah, fuck.
Don't do this to me.
Yeah. It's way better. It's fucking way better.
No. Please. Please don't. Please.
See my reaction here? Like, you just witnessed it, okay? Like, it's more powerful in the game, dude. Like, why? Like, I teared up a little bit when I watched it on the TV series, just a tiny bit, but when I watched the game, even though I didn't tear up right now, but it just feels more somber. It feels more just, And look, I'm not one for comparisons, but I'm one for comparisons. You got to make things better. If you're going to do something, do it better. I don't know what they were going for. I'm not sure. Neil Druckmann, he's a master of his craft, and so is the guy that was directed Chernobyl. Like, I totally get it. I know what they're doing. I think this particular scene, man, it just hits so much more in the video game. Okay, I talked about the composition. I talked about the song. I think higher-pitched music for sad scenes just elicit a much stronger reaction out of someone. It's a weird thing because you think of casinos, right? Gambling machines. They make high-pitched noises to keep your attention, right? To keep you kind of addicted. It's that's why pop music is so high, in pitch. But even in sad scenes, you think that really, that a lower tone to it, like in the TV series, would be more effective. But on the contrary, you have the song here in The Last of Us at a higher pitch, and it works much better. It just really hits. And the thing too is that Sarah has a higher pitched voice, and that is much more impactful to me. And it's very innocent. Even though Sarah's like 12, 13, 14, I'm not sure, you just really feel that little girl, aspect with her dad. That dad seeing his little girl die right in front of him. And that's much more impactful, man. When we see a child die compared to a teenager, it's much more impactful when you see a child, because we know what childhood means, to parents. We know how innocent that life is. For Sarah, I think it was much more impactful hearing that higher pitched voice, which is so weird that I'm making these arguments, and some of you might be a little weird, like, dude, why are you so hung up on the pitch of a little girl or whatever, like in a TV series or in a video game? Look, it's a thing, okay? Like there's reasons why this stuff is more impactful, okay? And that's one of them. And she also is not, she doesn't hyperventilate as much in this one. It's not as distracting, I would say. And you hear those high-pitched squeals and just, you hear this despair, like she is dying. You hear that. And that happens too in the TV series. And I guess it's much more, I don't know, disturbing, just someone bleeding out going, that's a very, but it's much more shock value essence to it. It has more of a shock value essence to it. Compared to the video game, it is just somber to the brim, man. It is just sensitive, and it's heartbreaking. It's more heartbreaking to me, for sure. And Joel, here's the thing too. He is tearing at the seams. You can hear it in his voice, and Pedro Pascal does a great job. I think throughout the episode he does a much better job, and I think face-wise he's a great actor. I think he's a fantastic pick for Joel, for sure. But I think Troy Baker's performance here just was much better to deliver that heartbreaking, dad seeing his daughter, essence, and the sadness that goes along with that. And he doesn't speak as much. Like I said, the whole scene relies much more on image, and that's very powerful. You see a little bit of a tear, flow down from Sarah. You see that so clearly. You see that a little bit in Joel, and man, and just seeing Sarah, and then she eventually dies, and she just has this blank stare of death, like that. So much more impactful, because we're seeing it, and just the scene has much more silence in the dialogue and just lets us see it, so just brilliantly done. And here, Tommy, the camera pans to Tommy a little bit, and Tommy's face is just devastated. He doesn't even know what to do. He doesn't know what to say. And I think that's much more realistic. If I was in that position, I wouldn't say anything. My face would be showing it, and and this scene is just, it respects what's happening, with and the characters and the way it's executed. Compared to the episode and the TV series, Joel is saying, "Tommy, help me," and Tommy just goes like, "Joel," and it's very heartbreaking. It is, and that is a different, I'm not saying that wouldn't happen in real life, but I just think that, art is all about creating the perfect scene, creating the perfect dialogue, creating the perfect scenario. It's not necessarily about realism. It's about creating and crafting the greatest piece of dialogue, scenery, cinematography, music to elicit the greatest amount of emotion from the viewer, from the recipient. There's also a little bit just much more, there's dynamics to the scene. It starts off, really just like sort of intense a little bit. Not as intense as the TV one does. But then it just then kind of calms down a little bit once Sarah passes, and Joel's performance changes. He just quiets down a little bit more. There's dynamics to the scene, which I really appreciate. And it kind of does it in a very controlled way. It goes from really high and then it slows down, but in a very just kind of normal pace. I will say though, the music does some interesting things in the TV series. I love the ending chord there, and I just love when Joel's hugging Sarah and he's just going like this. I think that was very effective, and just the music. I think it's a different feel to it, and I think it's great in its own right. But I think if you're really just looking to just tear apart the hearts of the viewers, the Last of Us video game does it better. And as much as you know, I'm a music guy, and I think that the Last of Us episode 1 did a great job with that. And it's a darker take, and it's got interesting twist with its chords, and it's got some, I don't know, it's melancholic. I don't know if it takes its time a little bit more too. I think that's a part of it. I think the TV one is a little bit faster in it, and it's a lot of I know. It's just it's not as effective, whereas this one just respects the cinematography, the imagery, and the passing of someone, and the dad and the daughter dynamic here is just much more heartbreaking. This is a video game, like the animations that we get are not as sophisticated as real life. Even though these characters were motion captured, by Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker, but it's still not as realistic as it would be in real life, but it's just so much more impactful. And I think that's insanely awesome. The fact that a video game can be much more effective than a scene with real people. A friend of mine, if you haven't checked it out, check it out. I did an audio story on The Last of Us video game with my friend Wilbert. It's like 29 minutes long. It's a mini movie in your ears. It is, I think it came out really great. I did some interesting things with it. Hopefully you enjoy it. Go check it out, please. I work super hard. Those are the videos that I work on the hardest, and they're the ones that get the least amount of views. So... But please, if you want to go see it, especially now that The Last of Us is as popular as it's ever been. But my friend Wilbert, he told me something. He said, well, the reason why we felt so much attachment to Joel and to Sarah, especially to Sarah, when she dies, very, in the first 20, 30 minutes of the game, is because we played as her, because we spent time with her. Playing, think of the Last of Us episode that, half of that is 30 minutes, right? And that's it. But, or film. I thought about that. And it's true, when you see a character die in a movie or in a TV series, right at the beginning, it's not as impactful. Like, it's still very sad, for sure. And if they do it right, it can be very effective. But it's not, I don't recall a death in the beginning of a movie, a TV series, whatever, that hit me as much as The Last of Us did. And I'm not one of those people that say like, oh, well, you're playing it. Like, it's kind of cheesy and corny, but it's true, right? It's true. That's the whole purpose of a video game. You wanted to do that. And with The Last of Us, I just have to fucking face it. It's probably part of the reason why it was so effective was because I did play as Sarah. But I don't know, now that I watched these two scenes back to back, I just think that The Last of Us Part 1 just has a better scene, regardless of the context. And it'd be interesting to see someone kind of compare the two without having any context of the video game, or having played it, or haven't even watched the TV series and see what they think. But I don't know, Wilbert said that, my friend Wilbert said that, and I don't know, I think I partly agree for sure. And it might be influencing me for sure, especially when I played the game, for damn sure. It's at least partly true, right? You'd have to think it is. I don't really see why it wouldn't, but I don't know. I can also see just greatness in something in a vacuum. I don't necessarily have to have context around it, but I'm a human being, and I do get affected by context, as much as everyone else does. So I'm not sure, but I think it's a valid argument, and I think that's perhaps one of the reasons why this is very impactful in a video game, and why it wasn't as impactful in a TV series, But anyways, let me know what you think. Comment down below and let me know if you disagree with me, if you agree with me, of course, especially if you disagree with me. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, or dislike it if you didn't. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoy this content. And share with your The Last of Us loving friends. Or should I just say Last of Us loving friends? I'm not sure. One of those. If it's your birthday, happy birthday. And that's it for me. You all take care, stay safe, and until next time, I love you.